There are some tough schedules in 2024, and one of them is by far the toughest. That if you've been following our channel or college football in general, you, I think, probably know which schedule that is. So we're going to give you the top 10 toughest schedules. We've previewed every schedule for every Power 4 team. We've given you a projected record. We'll be starting predictions next week, so you can go back and watch those videos if you missed them. This is pretty simple. Just use a point system based off of the different tiers that I have teams in. Also accounted for home and away if you had more home games or away games. Obviously, more away games would make the schedule tougher. And we get our top 10 toughest schedules. A couple of honorable mentions here for the toughest schedules. How about Vanderbilt? They didn't quite make it onto the list. Again, we're only doing top 10, but they play Missouri, they play Alabama, they play Texas, they play LSU, they play Tennessee. That's a pretty tough schedule there in the SEC. And then also a team that I initially thought would be on this list, but again, with the point system, they didn't quite make it. And I think people do get, they get too concerned with the top 2 or 3 games. They're like, oh, we play team A, B, and C. This is a really tough schedule. Well, the point system goes through the entire schedule. So maybe you have 3 really, really tough games, but then if you have 4 or 5 easier games, obviously it's going to pull that down. But Michigan has a really tough schedule. Like I said, I was surprised they didn't make the list. Making it into the top 10, that just shows you how tough schedules are for some teams this year. But yeah, they play Texas in the non-conference. They've got USC, Washington on the road. They've got Oregon. They've got Ohio State. Really, the only thing missing here maybe is Penn State. If they had Penn State on the schedule, then this definitely would have made it into the top 10. But still, I respect this schedule, and I think this is a really tough schedule. Not to mention, Fresno State's a good group of 5 teams. So, yes, a very tough schedule for Michigan. Didn't quite make it on the list. Again, I think there are 10 schedules that are even tougher than this, and we'll start with the number 10. That is South Carolina. You look at LSU, Ole Miss, Alabama, Oklahoma, Texas A&M, Missouri, Clemson. Now you can see why, there are schedules tougher than Michigan's. This one is brutal, and again, it seems crazy that this is at number 10. That's how tough some of these schedules are, and it's also, there's not a lot of parity in schedules. There are some really, really tough ones, but there are also some really, really easy ones. I've been doing this for several years. I've never seen such a disparity in the toughest schedules and the easiest schedules, and it's going to have an impact on college football. It's going to have an impact on those records at the end of the year. Obviously, bad news for South Carolina. Again, you're talking about road games against Kentucky, Alabama, Oklahoma, Vanderbilt, and Clemson. Not horrible on the road, but the home schedule, I mean, look at that. Again, LSU, Ole Miss, Texas A&M, Missouri. Very tough schedule here for South Carolina. Number 9 is Mississippi State. They go on the road to play Arizona State in the non-conference. Really not a tough non-conference schedule. This is all about the conference schedule. You got Texas and Georgia, the top tier of the SEC, both on the road. Absolutely brutal. So you got Texas A&M. You've also got Tennessee and Ole Miss on the road. Ole Miss is right there in that second tier of the SEC. And Tennessee's right there behind them. Missouri on the schedule as well. Yeah, you can see there are some brutal schedules this year, and Mississippi State definitely has one. UCLA up next at number 8. They play LSU in the non-conference, so obviously a really tough game there in the non-con. They've got Oregon. They got Penn State on the road. They've got Nebraska on the road, Rutgers on the road, Iowa, at Washington, USC. So this is a really, really tough schedule, and just not, where are the easy wins on this schedule? I mean, they're just not there. You even got Fresno State in the non-conference. They play at Hawaii. I mean, this just from top to bottom is going to be a difficult schedule for UCLA. They might not have as many top-tier opponents on the schedule. They got Oregon. They got Penn State. They got LSU. So they don't have Ohio State. They don't have Michigan. But still, when you go through the entire schedule, this thing is really, really tough. All right, number 7 is Oklahoma. Another tough schedule. Welcome to the SEC. They play actually a pretty tough non-conference schedule with Houston and Tulane. I don't think Tulane's going to be maybe quite as good as they have been the last few years, but they still should be solid. And Houston, I think, is a decent team out of the Big 12. But then you look at the SEC schedule. Tennessee, at Auburn, of course, Texas. They play South Carolina, at Ole Miss, at Missouri, Alabama, and at LSU. Are you kidding me? This is tough, and it's just getting tougher as we go through these schedules. We're just at number 7. Let's go to number 6 now. That's Arkansas. How about in the non-conference? Oklahoma State, a team that I think is a top 10 team this year, and they play them on the road. That's tough. Auburn on the road. You got Texas A&M, Tennessee, and LSU. At Mississippi State, Ole Miss, Texas, and at Missouri. At least they don't play Georgia. I mean, that's the only good news on this schedule. But it's a really, really tough one again with Texas, Ole Miss, Texas A&M, Tennessee, LSU, Oklahoma State, Missouri. I mean, very, very tough schedule here for Arkansas. All right, number 5 is Georgia. Yes, Georgia has a tough one this year. We've seen in the past, Georgia on the flip side, we've seen them have some of the easiest schedules, but not this year. They've got Clemson in the non-conference. You've got a very tough game there, respectable opponent there. Also, Georgia Tech, so 2 Power 4 teams in the non-conference. They'll play Kentucky on the road. They'll play at Alabama, Auburn, Mississippi State, at Texas, Florida, at Ole Miss, and then Tennessee. So, you're talking about the top teams out, other than Georgia. Who are the top teams in the SEC? Texas, Ole Miss, Alabama. Yeah, they play all of them. They also played Tennessee again and Clemson in the non-conference. This is going to be a tough schedule for Georgia. That's why I think it's going to be tough for them to go undefeated this year, even though I think they might be the best team in college football. All right, number 4 is Georgia Tech. They've got Florida State, and ignore that VMI that's green there. I guess this was a leftover. That was leftover from the projected record series. But yeah, Florida State and Ireland, that's a conference game, so they're going to play them, of course. You look at the non-conference, let's just skip to that. The non-conference does have Georgia, and they play Georgia on the road. And then it also has Notre Dame. So you're talking about Notre Dame and Georgia in the non-conference. That is brutal. You've got Florida State, who's going to be one of the better teams in the ACC, of course. Maybe the best team in the ACC. Syracuse, Louisville, pretty good teams out of the ACC. North Carolina also on the road. Virginia Tech on the road. That's a tough place to play, and that's going to be a good team this year. They've got Miami and NC State. But yeah, it's really more about the non-conference. It's tough to make it into the top 10 if you play in the ACC or even the Big 12. But when you add a non-conference schedule with Notre Dame and Georgia, yeah, that's going to make the schedule really tough. All right, number 3 is Purdue out of the Big 10. They'll play Notre Dame also in the non-conference and Oregon State, and they play Oregon State on the road. So that's a pretty tough non-conference schedule there. They've got Nebraska at Wisconsin, at Illinois. They get Oregon. And check this out. They've got Oregon, Ohio State, and Penn State, who those might be the 3 best teams in the Big 10. They don't have Michigan. I mean, that's the one bright spot on this schedule, but this is a brutal schedule. A lot of road games. They actually have 6 road games, so half of their games are away from home. Again, Notre Dame in the non-conference, Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State. This is a really tough schedule. Let's go to number 2 now, and that's USC. They play LSU and Notre Dame in the non-conference. Are you kidding me? That's going to be tough. Then they've got Michigan. They've got Penn State. They've got they don't play Oregon. I thought they played Oregon, so I guess they don't play Oregon or Ohio State. So they don't have. If you look at the top end, I guess it's not horrible, but it's still really tough. Again, LSU, Michigan, Penn State, and Notre Dame, 4 really, really good teams. But they're just. I mean, where do you find the easy wins here? They don't get to play. I think Illinois and Purdue are probably the worst teams in the Big Ten this year. They don't get to play either one of them. They don't get to play even like Indiana. I mean, this is a really tough schedule just because there are no easy wins on this schedule other than maybe Utah State. And again, you got LSU and Notre Dame in the non-conference. You've got, let's see how many road games they have. Michigan, Minnesota, Maryland, Washington, UCLA. So 5 road games. I guess if you count LSU, that's a neutral site game. So 6 games away from home. And yeah, this is a tough schedule, but look, none of these schedules come close to number 1. This one, I don't know if I've ever seen a gap this wide between the number 1 toughest schedule and the number 2 toughest schedule in the point system that we use. I mean, this thing is just brutal. Here it is. It's Florida. You all probably know this. They've got Miami, UCF, and Florida State in the non-conference. That's their non-conference. We're talking about Miami and Florida State, probably top 25 teams, possibly top 15 teams. UCF is going to be solid. They might be a team that could crack the top 25 this year. So you start there with the non-conference, and then you look at the conference schedule. Yep, they play the top 2 teams, Georgia and Texas. Also, you got Ole Miss, who's probably the 3rd best team. You've got Texas A&M. You've got Tennessee on the road. You got LSU. I mean, this is just brutal. Other than Samford, there's not a game. They don't get to play Vanderbilt even, a game that they're used to getting. They don't even get to play Vanderbilt. So Samford is really their only easy win. You look at Mississippi State. I think they're going to be towards the bottom of the SEC, but they have to play them on the road. This is, again, Florida might be a pretty good team this year, but I don't know if a pretty good team could survive this schedule. You'd have to be a great team to survive this schedule and have a successful season. Again, this is clearly the toughest schedule in 2024. I don't think there's really any argument. But again, that's our top 10 toughest schedules list. You can give me your thoughts down below, and look for our next video. It's going to be the top 10 easiest schedules for 2024. And again, there is a big, big difference.